What's going on, everyone? James Klug here. I am outside of the American Academy of Pediatrics Convention in Anaheim, California, where people have gathered to raise awareness about the medicalization of children experiencing gender dysphoria or similar issues. Now, today I have the pleasure of highlighting someone that's been traveling all over the country to educate people about how children cannot consent to medical transition, and he's been incredibly effective. Billboard Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm super stoked. We got about 40 supporters out here today spreading the truth about why we shouldn't be transitioning kids. So I'm looking forward to a great day of conversations.
Awesome. You ready to go talk to some people?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
What's up, my friends? How's
Hey guys,
it going?
would any of you guys like to chat with us?
Wondering if you wanted to have a conversation today about any of this.
I do not.
How are you?
Good to
bro?
see ya.
Never met you.
Get
Crazy.
out of our space.
Oh, are you pushing me? Why are you?
This is
Excuse
assault.
me, you
This
can't
is
push
actually
people.
assault.
Hey,
You can't get
bl-
physical.
Excuse me. Jamie, good to see ya.
Yeah, you too, bro.
You have any words for the camera for our video?
Yes. Okay. Anyways, hi. I'm Jamie, the founder of Gays Against. And we're here to represent the gay and trans community, that we stand against this. The mass majority of our community stands against this, and they are giving us a bad name, and we see ourselves in these children.
We'll try to have some conversations. The siren makes it difficult, obviously, but we'll do our best. See, now that they've got them distracted, we can talk to some people. Shout out to Jamie for sacrificing herself back there so we can go have some conversations. She jumped on that grenade for us.
Your kid's on puberty blockers?
My extended family is on puberty blockers.
How old are they, if you don't mind me asking?
They started puberty at 11, and they didn't want to have breasts. They didn't want to have, and it's a pause. It's reversible. Puberty blockers are reversible. It's a pause, but our family member has been trans since 4. Say coincidentally you felt like you were a girl, but you were in a man's body. To force you to get puberty, hair, underarm hair, Adam's apple, when that's not you, and you grow in that body, these puberty blockers allow these children to not have that body, because that body for them is death.
So the first claim, puberty blockers are reversible. How does that work? How are they reversible?
It's a pause, because what a puberty blocker does is it pauses the puberty process. There's 5 stages of puberty, and so basically it pauses it. So the minute they get off of the puberty blockers, their body continues in their biological puberty.
So out of 100 kids, how many of these kids do you think come off puberty blockers, and when do they come off of them, do you think?
The only kids that are really that are trans and not, experimenting or anything, they go through with it.
Yeah, they stay on them.
They stay on them until they get onto cross hormones, which are not reversible.
So therefore, it's not a pause. It's just
It is a pause.
stopping puberty.
No, it's a pause, because they can get off of them and continue in the regular biological puberty. So
Well,
it
they
is
could.
a pause.
So the truth is that.
But
sure,
it's their
if
decision,
Okay, so.
right? If
May I just
my
make my
child-
counterpoint?
Let me finish for a second.
All right.
If our children want to grow breasts and hips if they're a trans boy, they have that option. They can always get off the blockers, and they don't want to, because they're in the wrong body.
Okay.
And so, go ahead to ask me your question.
Okay, so sure, if a child went on puberty blockers for 3 months or so, came off, not too much harm done, right? Puberty would resume.
It would even presume if they went on for 2 years, it would still resume.
They
Their
would have
breasts
lost.
would start to grow.
They would have lost out on 2 years of development.
No,
Like
they
these
would.
boys that go on puberty blockers from the age of 12 to 17, for example, they end up with a micropenis for life.
Are you talking? No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
Well, sure they do.
You're saying that it just resumes,
Based on-
and there's
yeah.
no damage
I
done.
work
What is
with-
your basis for saying that, if you don't mind me asking?
Because I work with our pediatricians, and I've worked with multiple pediatricians on that, and that's scientific evidence that they provide.
So you're not
Where's
aware
your
that these boys
information?
end up with a micropenis for life?
Are you talking about trans boys, or are you talking about biological boys
I'm talking about males.
that get onto the puberty blockers?
That's right, they end up with a micropenis for life.
They probably want that. They don't want a penis.
No,
they want a vagina.
but puberty doesn't resume at 17. Those years are
So
gone.
here's what happens
Those years
with
are
the
gone.
boys. You're talking about a biological boy who wants to be a female, right? They do need at some point in time to have penile growth. So their pediatrician and their endocrinologist will work with them on that, because in order to have a
Oh, will they?
successful vaginoplasty,
Yeah.
they have to work together with their endocrinologist. Yeah, they do.
So do you know what ends up happening
have
to
you
these
have
boys?
you met with a pediatrician?
Hold on. Like,
Have you?
let's have a back and forth here where you talk and then I
Yeah,
talk.
okay.
Let's do that.
Go ahead, let's
That's
do it.
like what we call a conversation. Yeah?
I'm aware of a conversation.
All right. These boys, when they grow up and they have this 12-year-old's penis as a 17 or 18-year-old and they want to get the vaginoplasty done, because it won't grow anymore, they end up cutting out a piece of their colon or a piece of their stomach to form the lining of the neovagina.
Doesn't matter.
This is
It
exact-
doesn't matter.
that doesn't
They want
matter?
a vagina. No, it doesn't matter.
think
Whatever
that's fine?
surgical, yeah, of course. Whatever surgical procedure they need to have a vagina to make them happy is in the medical community's decision. It's not yours.
Oh, I see.
It's theirs.
I just believe everyone has a right to receive medical care, regardless
Right.
of how they identify.
Okay. So do you think a 10-year-old, for example, can consent to sterilizing themselves? Do you think they can understand that decision when they're 10 years old and still believe that a big fat man in a red suit flies through the sky at lightning speed, comes down their chimney and leaves presents under their tree?
I think that's a loaded question.
Do you think children can consent to throwing away their future sexual function?
If they're at an age at which they understand their own identity, yeah.
What age is that okay?
I don't know, I'd say about 15, 16.
You would be against any form of transitioning before 15, 16, is that correct?
If the parents consent to it, then, yeah. I think they should be allowed to,
At any point or just 15, 16?
at any point.
Okay, so if they, let's say 7 years old, parents say it's okay, go for it?
If it's their kid,
It's their kid, so surgical transitioning, just to confirm, I'm not like a yes
I'm
for you?
not necessarily surgical, but maybe hormones if they'd like that.
What if a parent consented to abusing their child? Would that be okay?
Well, that's just against, human rights in general,
So we agree that we shouldn't give parents the right to abuse their own children.
Yeah, but it depends what your definition of abuse is.
Well, I would say that altering the biology of a 10-year-old, destroying their future sexual functions, sterilizing them, cutting off their body parts, I'd say that's abuse, personally.
All right, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
You disagree with that?
No comment.
It's our children's decision to
Right.
work with their medical providers, not yours.
Do you mind if I ask you how young you believe that children should be able to surgically transition their gender or start the process? How young, in your opinion? Is
How
that okay?
young?
Would you be okay with it at 5 years old?
No, of course not.
But
They're
you'd be-
children.
You'd be
But-
okay with 11 because they're not children?
No. Surgery. So let's classify surgery, okay? There's a lot of different surgeries. So we have a 13-year-old trans friend, biologically a female who's transitioned to a male. He wasn't aware of his identity, so he started to develop breasts just before he had the puberty blockers. So now he doesn't want those breasts. So he's 14.
And he's 14 right now, and he
He's
doesn't
14
want.
and he wants the breast tissue removed from his top.
And you'd be okay with that?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they know what's best for them.
Yeah. My 13-year-old's pretty clear. This 13-year-old is pretty clear.
Sure.
I know. They don't go to school camps because they're embarrassed about their breast tissue because they are boys. So, but as far as like bottom surgery and stuff, like I actually think that they should be adults. My opinion.
What if the parents object to it?
Parents object to children being gay and they're still gay.
Oh, so you think this is the same thing as being
Yeah,
gay?
absolutely.
You think altering a child's biology, sterilizing them, cutting off their breast
It's
tissue
not
is the same thing as
sterilizing
being
them.
gay?
They're choosing
Of
to
course they're
not
being
have that
sterilized.
body.
Don't you think that's something we should be getting answers to?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's sterilizing them. Like, what is exactly being sterile about it? They
Well,
they
that's
could
what
have
happens
kids.
with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones.
No, I think they would be able to have IVF or like the medical community is so advanced now that they would probably be able to have kids. I mean, if all else fails, adopt.
No, they
They're not
can't. And if you look at the
sterilizing.
consent forms that they sign from these children's hospitals, it says right on the consent forms that infertility is one of the problems here. Back and forth conversations.
It didn't look like that when you were talking to the
No?
lady before.
What did it look like?
Yeah, you were being very manipulative and also very changing what she was trying to say, and just
Really?
I don't necessarily like your
What would
approach.
you say he was being manipulative about?
Well, what was your question? What are you trying to ask us? Because it's a separate conversation, right? So
You were saying he's been manipulative. How so?
first of all, you were trying to talk about trans people, like it's something new. Trans people existed way before
I never
any
said
of
that.
these. Okay, but I'm explaining that.
Oh.
What
So,
was he
like,
being manipulative about?
Can you let me finish what I'm trying
Please,
to say?
yeah.
Yeah, so that trans people existed before any of this ever happened. trans people were eliminated from the world, and they've always existed. We're trying to affirm and support.
I'm here talking about the medical procedures going on.
Okay, so
I don't
not
think,
about
I
how
don't think the
you
argument was
identify.
that it didn't exist. I don't think that's. You didn't say that, did you? You didn't say that, did you?
Well, gender dysphoria is real. So I frame this as there are children with gender dysphoria, and we need to help them with the best scientific method to do so, to feel comfortable in their bodies. But there isn't evidence to support medically transitioning children that this is particularly helpful for them. And we know from academic studies that have been done for decades into gender dysphoria that 80 to 90% of these children see their gender dysphoria go away when they go through puberty.
Do you disagree with that?
yes,
Why is that?
because a lot of kids, you're saying there's a lot of proof that they that after they go to puberty they're like fine and whatnot, but the point is they don't even have the language to really understand or maybe express things. And then also people transition through life multiple times, and so why are you saying that they're not able?
Surgically, they do.
We're not even talking
Hormonally,
about
they do.
whatever's right between them and their doctor and the family. I don't know why other people are getting into other people's business. It's so silly to me.
I think the conversation probably revolves around when there starts to be, hormonal transitions, surgical transitions for minors. I think that's when people start to want to get involved in what they call the protection of children. Of course, I understand that you guys disagree with that, but do you see what I'm saying there? Is what
Affirming care saves lives.
saves lives?
Yes, it does. It saved my own child. I have a trans daughter. She just transitioned. She's going to be 20, so she did go through puberty. And I would rather have a trans child than a dead child any day of the week.
So, like, just across the street here, we've got a few people who themselves have already detransitioned. We've got Chloe Cole. She's just turned 18. She doesn't know if she can ever have kids. She had her breast cut off when she was 15 years old. She went to her pre-surgical appointment when she was, I think she was still 14. She might have just turned 15. And this was at a Kaiser Permanente in Oakland, California. And there were 12 other kids there at the same pre-surgical appointment for getting double mastectomies. And many of them were younger than her. So do you think it's appropriate that we're cutting off the breasts of 13 and 14-year-old girls when they've just suddenly identified as being trans in the previous year? They never
If a
felt.
human wants to do it, let them do it. It's better than them killing themselves.
Is that the case?
Yes.
So this is the number one argument I always hear. If you go to a website called statsforgender.org and search suicide in the search bar, you'll find the truth about this. I don't want to sit here and battle with you, but it is true that suicidality is high.
And you think that
And we
site's
need-
a credible source because it has a .org?
It's a credible source because it's linking to the very few academic studies that have been done in this. So it is true that suicidality is higher amongst this cohort, and obviously we need to help people who are struggling with suicidal ideation.
I think the
But we don't
main
do that
issue-
by altering their bodies to fix a problem with the mind.
Well, I think you're allowed to have your own opinion.
People need to be affirmed and to be loved for who they are and not to be made to feel like they are wrong and they're sinning or they're going against Jesus Christ. Jesus preached love and acceptance, and what is happening with the twisting of the Bible is
Yeah, well,
so wrong.
I'm not a Christian, but the Bible says in the very first chapter, male and female, he created them. So, sex is binary.
And as we know, books change all the time, and there's
Oh, okay.
edits that need to be made.
Exactly.
So
So Genesis was edited?
I'm saying it should be.
Oh, okay.
I guess
Yeah.
for the purpose of this conversation, I think we were trying to keep it maybe more secular, so it could be a level playing field for a conversation. Is that
Right.
fair to say?
Sure.
Okay.
So you asked me what do I think about the claim that these kids are going to kill themselves. So we have academic studies into gender dysphoria going back 5 decades. They're all on my website under the studies section if you want to check them out. These aren't my studies, these are academic studies. All these studies show the same thing. Kids with severe gender dysphoria from a young age. If you look at the most recent study, for example, it followed 139 boys from the age of 5 all the way up into their 20s. Because this used to affect boys way more than girls, and this is completely flipped. But these were boys with severe gender dysphoria from a young age. This was before they gave them puberty blockers. 87.8% of these boys saw their gender dysphoria desist when they went through puberty. 64% grew up to be gay. I talk to a lot of gay men, and I've got a lot of gay friends. A lot of them tell me when they were little they had gender dysphoria. They wanted to play with the girls, they played with dolls, whatever. And if they were growing up today, they'd be getting given these chemical castration drugs, which is what puberty blockers are. Their bodies wouldn't develop as they should. They'd be given estrogen. They'd end up with a micropenis for life. And they would have irreparably harmed their bodies. Do you know who Marcy Bowers is?
No.
Okay, so Marcy Bowers is the president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Marcy Bowers is a trans woman. Okay? Marcy Bowers did the surgery on Jazz Jennings at the age of 17, where they had to cut out some of Jazz's stomach to form his
Perfect.
male vagina.
Whatever Jazz needs to do to have a great vagina.
Okay.
I support that.
Great. Wonderful.
I do. I support that.
A Zoom call with Marcy Bowers and Johanna Olsen-Kennedy from the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and a bunch of other specialists in the field of transgender health. Marcy Bowers, the president, admitted that literally none of the boys who went on puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2, which is the beginning stage of puberty when they start puberty blockers.
Biological boys?
Yes.
Or trans boys?
Yeah, boys.
You can't just say boys. Are you saying?
When I talk like science,
Okay,
so
then say
boys.
biological boys, because when you say trans boys,
Kind of redundant, isn't it?
no, it's not.
Okay.
That's what this whole argument
All right,
is.
I'll play
is you're,
along. So
in
biological
education.
boys, literally,
Your
hold on. So
ignorance
literally
is
none of
part
the
this
biological
conversation.
boys who started on puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2, as adults, none of them have ever had any sexual function. They've never been able to have an orgasm. So do you think, my question is...
That's not true.
This is
I've
from
spoken
Marcy
with-
Bowers.
No, it doesn't matter.
The president of WPATH.
I've spoken with men who've had that surgery, and they have orgasms. So
Men. I'm talking about kids.
I'm talking about trans
Hold
people
on.
who've had the surgery who have orgasms.
When
All
did
right.
they have the surgery?
Probably as adults.
In the United States, we obviously protect youth, and we've had a history of protecting youth. Look no further than not being able to see a rated R movie under the age of 18 in many theaters. This is a lot more serious than these things. This is a lot more serious than tattoos. It's a lot more serious than all of these. These are life-altering decisions. So do you see kind of why people have a problem with the transitioning of children when that almost should be a last resort type thing and possibly adulthood? Do you see where people are coming from there, or no? You don't?
No, not really.
Okay.
Let's back it up.
Okay, which surgery?
Children.
I'm talking about kids who started on puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2. As adults, none of them have had any sexual function. Do you think a 12-year-old can consent to giving away their permanent adult sexual function when they don't even understand what that means?
I think you're basing this on lies.
I
don't
can show
think
you
that
the
this
video
is
right
true.
now.
That's all right.
need to see your videos.
It's Marcy Bowers.
It's okay.
Okay.
See it.
You don't want to. You don't need to see it.
If an adult decides to transition,
No,
yes,
no,
they
you know
have
what?
some sexual function. I'm talking about when they give kids puberty blockers at 10 or stage 2.
What
when
I
they
don't
grow
think
up in
you
adulthood, they
understand-
aren't able to.
These children have very high suicide rates who are not allowed to transition.
I hear this all the
So what
time.
she's saying is I'd rather have a live trans child
Right.
than a dead whatever you're proposing. It's a life and death matter.
Yes, that is the coercive
do you have a trans
manipulation that
child?
is always used.
Do you have a trans child?
And it is true that suicidality is higher amongst this cohort. It's higher among kids with autism. It's even higher with kids with autism. It's higher among kids with anorexia. It's higher among kids
What's your
with
point?
personality disorders.
What's your point?
But with these other conditions, we don't affirm a girl with anorexia and say, yes, sweetheart, you're overweight. Let's give you
Anorexia is
liposuction.
different. Anorexia is different. Anorexia
This is the only
a
condition
disease.
in the world
This
where
is
we
not
accept
a
the self-diagnosis of a
No,
child.
This is not a disease. I'd rather have a child, a trans child, any trans child who's alive, than whatever you're proposing. It's dead, and that's
So
what the
how many of
ultimate
these kids are
argument-
killing themselves, I wonder?
Which trans children who are not allowed to transition have a very high suicide rate.
You're telling me there's an epidemic of suicides going on?
Trans people are
Based on what?
and we existed and thrived.
Based
Based
on
on what?
facts. Based on facts.
Well, I
Thank
can tell you the
guys.
facts
What
if you
facts are
want.
you talking about?
I'm talking about scientific facts.
What's your basis for saying that?
When trans people exist
July.
far more.
We don't even know the effects that these hormones have on our brains as we develop. We don't know the effects that the cross-sex hormones have on our brains as we develop. This whole thing is an experiment on kids. These puberty blockers have never been approved for the purpose that they're being used on these children. They were approved for endometriosis in women, uterine fibroids, prostate cancer in men. Same drug given to pedophiles in the past to chemically castrate them. But they're being used off-label because they happen to stop puberty in these children. Because it stops the pituitary gland from releasing couple hormones, which in turn generate testosterone and estrogen. And we've got all these kids now, mostly girls, who didn't have gender dysphoria when they grew up, but they're 12, 13, 14 years old. Now they identify as boys.
Really quick. I wanted to know if you guys disagreed or agreed with anything that he
Here we
had
go.
to say.
There is no really quick. Disengage.
You don't want to.
Pretty typical, right? We're talking science, we're talking facts. They can't handle that. So people come over and their only tactic ever is to try to stop the conversation.
My name's Scott Nugent. I'm a 49-year-old transgender man, lesbian who medically transitioned from a woman to a man. Well, woman to a trans man, right?
People saying it's either transition your child or let them die. What would your response to that be?
Reply to that with the truth, with the absolute truth. And the truth is this, is all 7 studies that were ever done that said that it helped children medically transition, that it was some miracle cure, has either been retracted or modified. Either retracted with it doesn't help anything, or modified with, we don't have enough people in this study to make any kind of judgment on that. From that perspective, it's false. They don't know if it increases suicide or it doesn't. What we do know is the only long-term study that was done from 1973 to 2003 in Sweden that followed 324 medically transitioned adults, and it found what we know in the medical or in the transgender community, which is the highest port of suicidal ideation, which is the study found, is 7 to 10 years after. It's not before. So
After
after you medically transition.